Hey, this is Douglas from Curing Broke, and today in this video, we are going to talk about imposter syndrome and how it affects us personally and professionally. So what is imposter syndrome? It's when someone feels like they don't have what it takes in a chosen field to be a professional. And because of that, they have this feeling of uncertainty. And the truth is, many of us experience uncertainty from, time to time. But people that suffer from imposter syndrome feel like that mostly all the time. But the truth is, no one is an expert at anything. We're constantly in this state of growth and movement, right? The fact is, there always will be an expert that we surpass, and there will always be someone that surpasses us. For example, before there was an Elon Musk, there was an Einstein. Before there was an Einstein, there was a Newton, right? We're all just temporary residents here on Earth progressing towards the next progression. Now, that sounded really, yet most people see themselves as not belonging to their profession or feeling like something is missing in their personal life, which causes a fear that develops from constantly chasing another expectation. This fear, it comes up when we feel like we let ourselves down on professional or personal performances. And it leaves this stale feeling of internal and external judgment, or more importantly, self-doubt. So we're often left with this internal dialogue, this chatter that goes on in our head that sounds like, what if they find out we're not as good as we say that we are? What if my boss discovers that I can't deliver on the project that I was actually hired for? What if I worked so hard joining this organization and I'm not the right culture fit? What happens if I finally have to admit to myself that I'm living my parents' dream for myself and I have no idea who I'm supposed to be? It's much easier to believe people will think badly of us and that we won't measure up to our own standards. However, for a majority of people, our own standards are just programmed in us from this constant consumption of data that's meant to make us buy things. But the only way that we'll actually buy those things is if we feel like we're less than, right? And that's just a cycle and a loop. And that could be enough to make anyone go crazy. And at some point, I'll talk about like dopamine detox and things of that nature, but let's not go off into that tangent. But let's talk about like just being stuck in a cycle of feeling like you're less than, a cycle of self-doubt. And here's the truth. Nobody's perfect, and nobody on earth has a monopoly on the truth. The only thing that we can be sure of is that there's a constant change and that constant evolution of ourselves, our inner selves. A mentor of mine shared this quote with me: a seed will never see itself become a tree. And that's something to think about. And I'll say it again. A seed will never see itself become a tree. And this is the part that I like to add to that. What if the tree just thinks that it's a leaf? Meaning not being connected to the full version of ourselves, just a small bit that we feel is unstable. But if you see yourself as a tree of who you are, that's your sturdiness. And the imposter syndrome comes from not feeling stable. And if you are just that leaf, that is the flimsy instability, the constant data that we get from, content that is, whether it be magazines, whether it be like, of course, internet, all these things, even family, that gives us all this beliefs that aren't our own, these thoughts that aren't our own, that make us feel like we're going crazy. That is part of that imposter syndrome that happens, right? And like, do you see yourself as that leaf or the tree? And again, very, very, but it's something to think about. And to tie that all together, That means, don't worry about your ability to do this monumental type of work. You being alive, you being that tree, right, is monumental enough. Because the core of everyone that is successful is they believe like they can do no wrong. And, why do you think that is? Why do you think that successful people believe that they can do no wrong? And the truth is, they have a vision greater than themselves. And to stick to this metaphor of a tree isn't concerned about being a tree. It's concerned about reaching towards the sun, right? It's always striving towards that. That's its only goal. One vision, one purpose. And for a majority of people, they get caught up in other people's purpose that they're not reaching towards their sun. It's like a tree trying to become another tree. It's not necessary. There is no growth from that. The growth comes towards the single direction of knowing, of heading towards the thing that is your life purpose. Like a tree's life purpose is to absorb the most amount of sunlight. I know that I'm stuck on this tree metaphor, but it really makes sense. It's a universal truth, right? Or the process of it is a universal truth. You chasing towards that sun is the thing that's going to give you that happiness because you are living towards, your purpose. So 2, why do millennials feel this way about imposter syndrome? 70% of young people experience imposter syndrome, according to Forbes magazine. People who experience imposter syndrome are high achievers unable to internalize and accept their own success, often attributing their accomplishments to luck rather than ability, and fear that others will eventually unmask them as frauds. Millennials are most likely to experience imposter syndrome, and not only because of technological advancements within their life, but societal pressures and social media comparisons, but again, also from their parents' expectations, which were also their parents' expectations, which were also their parents' expectations. So you're living this life, this continuous cycle from the media, from like your parents, and you're not able to actually live your own life. Or if you do, that might be your midlife crisis, but wouldn't it be better to get ahead of that before all that, right? A lot of people become convinced that they're frauds, or they fool themselves that everyone around them thinks that they're a fraud. But that's like that internal dialogue that goes on that I mentioned before. And if you could just be grounded and know what your purpose is, it kind of circumvents all that self-doubt. But you have to get clear on who you are. So ways to deal with imposter syndrome from working at home. So most people will tell you that they have imposter syndrome. Well, when you tell most people that you have imposter syndrome, they'll tell you to simply like ignore it, especially again, if you're working from home or you're working in general. You may hear someone say, don't let that get in the way of your productivity. Do what you need to do to be successful day to day, and don't concern yourself with the big picture. They might say, do what you need to do to succeed. Don't get caught up in the big picture of your life. Just get your work done. Or they might say, the future will take care of itself. Just keep moving forward. And it's kind of like sweeping something under the rug. You can keep doing that, but after a while, that pile is going to start making that rug look a little bit weird. And that's where that uncertainty, that doubt, that kind of like you can only fill up so much self-doubt in your body before it starts manifesting in other ways. Lack of sleep, lack of appetite, or a lot of appetite. You don't want to get up. All these conflicting things because there's an incongruency in yourself, which could possibly lead to self-medicating in one form or the other. And that's just not the healthiest outcome, especially when you work from home and there is no feedback. There is no feedback from like having to put on work clothes and go to work. Like your home becomes not like this place that's a safe place. It becomes a reminder of this continuous cycle. And there has to be a way for you to find refuge in a place that you call home. So my personal suggestion for people that have this problem is to get a good mentor, someone with more experience, and not copy them, but model their framework of how they're able to navigate, how they were able to navigate past their own imposter syndrome, or how they were able to navigate, working from home, how they were able to get an outcome that you want, because there is a framework to follow. The truth is, like, most successful people in the world are constantly learning from those who are more experienced than them, right? It's not about figuring out things on your own. It's about being resourceful enough to find someone that's done it, so you're not constantly in this loop of trying to figure something else out, but you're just climbing up towards that version of yourself that you want to become. And the other thing is not putting other people on a pedestal. You have to start seeing other people as your equal. The only reason why someone has imposter syndrome is that he or she just has this fear that they aren't good enough. So in my own experience, the best way to overcome that is just having a good mentor that you can model. And the goal of having a mentor is not putting someone on a pedestal. The goal of having a mentor is they've gotten past their imposter syndrome in the first place. So actually having a framework to follow, having someone guide you that knows exactly how to navigate a situation that you're in, especially if they're in the same field that you're in, it takes away that uncertainty. And when you take away uncertainty, the only thing you're left with is clarity. And having clarity is just relaxing, right? Overall, is there a cure for imposter syndrome? I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychiatrist. So take my advice as what it is, advice. But the times where I felt like I had imposter syndrome, my identity wasn't aligned with my profession. And I didn't have the tools that I have now. And so for me, when that reached a kind of apex, I decided to leave the country. I left the United States for a year and lived in Costa Rica. I left my life behind. I left my apartment behind. I sold all my stuff. And ultimately that led me to where I am today, talking to you. But a lot of people, especially in the world right now, they can't do that sort of stuff. They can't rapidly change their environment. But the one thing that you can do is understand exactly what your mission in life is. For me, I had to change my environment to get clear on the mission first. But if I changed my mission, I probably wouldn't have to change my environment. And there's this hierarchy that show right here that kind of goes through that, and I'll create another video on that. The truth is, where the world is right now, just traveling to another country might not be the best look, but you can create change in yourself. And this is my advice after, a few years of working on myself. And it's asking yourself the right questions. And this is kind of going on the inside and changing yourself, opposed to having to go to another place to get the clarity. And so these are some of the questions that I feel like could help you get clear on who you are, so you don't feel like you're suffering, to relieve some of that pressure if you're feeling imposter syndrome. What do I want for my life? And what is the context of what you want? Meaning, is it personal or is it work related? After you figure out what you want, what will having that actually do for you? Meaning, once you know what you want, how will that change your life? What is the actual strategy you need to get that sort of goal in your life? Meaning, it's one thing to have the big idea, but what can you do actually in reality to get there? What is the first step for you to make this goal actually happen? So there's one thing to have a overall strategy, but then like literally we have to get the courage to take that first step. So what is that first step? Then the next thing is like asking yourself, do you have any internal resistance for making this goal actually happen? So a lot of times, like because of that self-doubt, we won't allow ourselves to change. And if we can ask ourselves, like, what is that resistance holding us back? As soon as we can actually confront, and when I say confront, I don't mean like aggressively or something like that, but understand is a better word, that resistance. Once we're able to find a way to relieve that resistance, we can actually like fully embody that change. And the way to like fully to change that resistance is understand what is the positive intent of that resistance. Meaning, so for me, like when I left America, I should ask, why do I want to leave America? And it's like, because I need a better environment. Okay, well, why do I need a better environment? Because I'm not in a place where I fully love myself. So why do I need to fully love myself? Because I want to feel connected to like more to healthier people. Why do I want to feel connected to healthier people? Because if I connect to people in a healthy way, then I can have a better communication with not only myself, but expressing like love to people. I know jumped around there, but if you get to that core of that concept of who you are, then you can start focusing on, okay, what's the strategy of me having better communication with people? I could have worked on that, but I chose to leave the country, which was totally fine. I enjoyed Costa Rica a lot, but it took me a while to figure out that step. I could have done it in a lot shorter time, and I still could have left the country, but I would have left in better circumstances. So, that is a strategy of going through those questions. And there's a link below this video that will have those questions listed out for you to look at. But being able to ask yourself those powerful questions can lead you to your own inner truth, which will then relieve some of that pressure, right, of that imposter syndrome, because you're getting clear on who you are, but you're getting clear on the vision of who you want to become. And for a lot of people, like, they don't need to do all that. The life is simple in the sense of you go to school, you learn a skill, you get a job, you make money, you buy a house, you have a family, you just keep on moving along, right? And a lot of people, they're happy with that. But for some people, for some of us, there's a deeper purpose. There's something that we're chasing. Some of us were just born with a different kind of purpose. Some of us were born with a purpose of feeling like we need to save the world or something huge, right? And some of us just have this feeling like we have to leave a mark here on the world, right? And if you're looking to make that mark on the world, you can't let imposter syndrome get in your way, because you're not going to enjoy it. You're going to bring up all these feelings of self-sabotage, and you're not going to enjoy the time that you actually have here achieving your purpose. So getting rid of that imposter syndrome any way that you can actually start enjoying life. You can start having the resources that make you feel like you're living in your purpose. So below, there's a link to a video. If it's not there yet, it will be, to me walking you through like how to understand imposter syndrome and how to change it. And in that, you'll find just a way to connect to yourself, but then also find a way forward of actually finding that strategy to move forward. I figured if I'm going to give you these questions, I should also give you the answer, right? So my name is Douglas, and thank you for watching this video, and click the subscribe button, and I'll talk to you soon in another one.